We go. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm Odin. I believe I know most, if not all of you, part of the team at Build It Green. And as I was saying, was so lovely to have Devaney and Sam kick us off with Devaney shared this beautiful quote by Audre Lorde. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. And it's so beautiful for us individually. And I know many of you shared your morning mantras in the chat after that. And then you got to chat with each other a little bit and introduce yourselves. But I think both for individuals and also for us as a network, this is such a beautiful thought as our and powerful thought as are all of Audre Lorde's quotes. And they really just show us that, especially in times like these, um, having a connection to our own vision and to what we see as possible, that image of the future and the world that is becoming and that we are helping to move into is just so reassuring, even in a world that is increasingly uncertain and chaotic. And just feels every day like a challenge. So we want to welcome everybody into this virtual network meeting. We're intending on doing these. I'll talk a little bit more about this just in an introduction, but we're intending on doing these on a quarterly basis. So this is kind of the final quarter of the year this year, but then next year we'll let you know the exact cadence and schedule, of course. We want to bring people together more regularly. Before we jump into our agenda and our conversation with each other for today, I just wanted to hear if there are any reflections from folks from the chats that you were in, or just maybe a morning mantra inspired something. So we won't hear from everybody, but just to get all of your voices as network members into the space, any reflections that folks want to share, and you can raise your hand or just we're a small enough group that you're welcome to unmute. Any opening reflections? Welcome. Something that you shared in your chat
Hello?
with another network member? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Oscar.
Oh, hey,
Something
Oscar.
that comes to mind. Uh, Hi, everyone. I'm glad to reconnect, and that was something that came up in our mission is just being able to reconnect from the Berkeley get together. Is there was so much interest of being able to chat with each other. We just didn't have a chance to follow up. So I'm glad that we've had this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And that's the intention behind this as well. I mean, it was such a powerful experience in Berkeley in June. We'll hear a little bit more. We'll get to reflect on that in just a few minutes. Deb's going to share a little bit about what's happening kind of in South Berkeley now from the Healthy Black Families perspective. And Tony is here from HBF as well. But we want to hear other reflections of, what's happening for all of you since that time. And then to create time to connect very intentionally. Anything else that folks want to share? Peter, please.
Yeah, hey Odin and everyone. It's nice to see y'all. I happen to be down in Long Beach for a conference for a couple days of local governments. This is the annual California uh, local cities conference, and this sort of reminds me of the tension that we have to think through of coming up with housing solutions at a kind of high policy level that are scalable, which seems to be the big push. And at the same time, recognize that folks on the ground, whether they're in local government or advocates, really deal with the nuances of the conditions, and those are
Mm,
important. And I feel like it's an ongoing tension. I was telling Tony in our little intro that I feel like there's been an imbalance over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Really kind of a bit of top-down thinking. And I liked what we discussed at the retreat and what we experienced about healthy Black communities and others, trying to be real shapers of some of those efforts. But I feel
mm,
it's a tension we have to always keep in mind. And I'm reminded again that our local government friend people can be our friends. It's not like local government is bad because they're also struggling with the same tension. Just wanted to
yeah,
share that.
beautiful. Thanks, Peter. Great. So I think we're gonna move on. I want to share a little bit about what we're talking about today, and also this marks a time where the network is really going through its own evolution. And so, Alex, if you can bring up the slides, we just have a couple of slides and want to maximize our time actually looking at each other's faces. This is what we're doing for today. We've done the welcome and grounding, a little bit of reconnecting. I'm going to provide a very high level sort of network updates of like where's the network going, where's Big's work right now, and then we want to spend the bulk of the time using the creed that we introduced at the gathering back in June, and really having that be a through line and a thread for thinking about our work on a number of levels, individual, collective, across the network, and um, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the collaborative potential moving forward for the network. And we'll close by 12:15 within the next hour. So we could do the next slide here. Yeah, so I basically just talked through this. I'm not gonna, we really just are doing this so that everybody here can connect. And we're pulling every time we pull to the network together, we want to do three things. We want to have an opportunity to reconnect and build relationship, which is so critical. We want to be able to learn from each other about the what we're doing and also about the deeper foundations and currents that support the work that we're doing. And then we also want to talk about, what's ahead and what is sort of strategic in terms of the field itself and how the network is a part of that and weaves that together. Next slide, please. So this is some of the potential we see unfolding, and we'll come back to this, and we want to get your feedback on this as well. But, want the network to be supported by consistent connection quarterly. And then we also have something we're starting called the Network Learning and Advisory Group. And we want to invite folks here who are interested in learning more about networks, helping to really think about the direction and application of the network here to come together every other month rather than quarterly. We'll be sending out monthly communications, not just what's happening, but with network stories and resources. We want to engage people, and this is one of the big messages and the ways that we're shifting just to support our own capability and capacity and impact, is that the network is this connective tissue that is going to link all of us who are doing this work, but in the context of the programs that we're going a little deeper on, and we're going to share that with you very briefly in a minute. And then we've also talked about, and this a little further in the future, some kind of map or directory for network members to connect with each other. And this is a feature of other networks as well. And we're just exploring how we might best bring that as a resource to all of you. Next slide, please. So all systems evolve. This is one of our kind of cornerstones of living systems thinking, is that change is always happening. And as many of you have heard, we talked about this at the gathering. We're really about supporting change makers who nurture people, places, and nature, the interweaving and the intersection of that. And so this network was created in a way that fostered innovation and connection. We've had several gatherings, and we're planning on continuing to have those, but on a biannual basis right now, not every year. And we also want to seed the possibility for ongoing working groups and celebrate the Innovation Fund. And I know several of you were a part of that. And we want to continue, even though we're not continuing the Innovation Fund as a separate program at this point. We want to continue to support the projects that were launched. And if people have ideas for other kinds of projects in that vein, we can talk after this meeting about what that looks like and how we might work together on that. But we want to encourage self-organizing and self-managing across the network as well, with places like this as seeds for that. And we've really evolved to focus on three core programs, and I mentioned earlier that the network will connect us around that. So next slide, and then I want to hand it off to Deb. So these are the three programs that we're doing. We're launching or have launched all of these. The Small Development Incubator, enabling the evolution of small development in California, right now taking place in both Sacramento and the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. The Builder Developer Affinity Group, where we're enlisting larger developers and using regenerative thinking to transform the industry, and the Regenerative Neighborhoods Initiative to engage at neighborhood scale to not only build community capability and power, but also to develop strategic partnerships. And Peter, this is part of what you were talking about with agencies and developers. So, yeah. If I'm going to transition now to Deb, and we wanted to hear a little bit about sort of reflections from the gathering, Deb, and then also kind of highlights of what's happening now in South Berkeley. And we'll share Deb's email and Tony's email in the chat for folks who want to plug in to staying posted on what's happening in South Berkeley and helping out there.
Greetings, everyone.
Yeah, let's stop sharing.
Thank you, Odin. So we have had wins. Definitely getting the West Lot development is a win. There's still tension around how the decision-making process is split. And there was issue with Bart insisting on the decision-making process being at least 51-49. So that's the thing. And it's it's directly linked to what I think keeping power concentrated in the pockets that folks want power to be concentrated. But it was a win. And now we've pivoted to the East Lot. And the East Lot, we're in the process of figuring out exactly what local orgs related to that specific space and surrounding area are thinking about. So we've had one-on-one conversations with organizations. We've pulled them in so that we can have a big picture, rough sketch of what they're thinking about as their desire in that space. And then we have the process of now
You can provide the tracking number or the names. We can really find it.
I'm giving you the name.
Tony, you're on yeah. And so we're in the process of so putting all of those into a bucket and having, a visual for people to meet around. So we're going to come together and sort of discuss and see where things line up, if there's any tension, right? And as you guys remember, the East Lot is tiny compared to the West Lot. So all the great ideas and thoughts people have around it might not necessarily fit, but then also possibilities are big, right? So, and we have some folks, and I think that's where connection with big would be really helpful around possibilities, right? Like what are ways we can actually interweave these things where it might seem impossible, right? Because, minds coming together can do great things. So that's happening with the East Lot. As you guys remember, we've had the priorities, and we're working to sort of ground that in the grassroots, which is my love, my passion, and there's a lot of places to plug into the east lot around that. And we're in the process of still getting those subgroups going. The November, December, as we all know, are times for things slow down a lot. Um, and a lot of times when we're in movement, folks don't really recognize that things slow down a lot. So they keep things on the agenda and they keep on going. You come into January depleted. So I'm in the process of sort of really pulling back and wanting to do one-on-ones with the priority group leaders, trying to see how they envision some of this stuff. And then coming back in January to hit the ground running with the subgroups.
Beautiful. And Deb, would you just as we wrap up and transition to our next activity, I'm
Mhm.
really curious, you mentioned sort of the, you know, big helping out, and I'm kind of wondering about, reflections from June and how that like energized you or changed your thinking at all, and what you feel like is appropriate in terms of support from the network. If you could just kind of briefly talk to that.
Um, I- it, it was a great gathering. It felt like there's um, a lot of people who do this for a living,
Mm-hmm.
different angles of it. And I think once the community is able to look at everything in the bucket, m- try to figure out where there might be tensions, prioritize what's in the bucket,
Yeah.
um, to have Big be able to look at that and say, "Mm, it's possible to have all this in
Mm.
this area, and this might be how it works." Another thing that I'm really um, wanting to tackle is the there's some stuff around building that I think is key that that needs to be talked about, especially as it relates to affordable housing. When you're putting, let's just say, the community decides what they want is 100 units in this very tiny space, right? Um, the quality of life of the people living in those 100 units, we want to maximize. And I think there's tension between how do we maximize the units uh, and the quality of life, right? The amount of sunlight in those units,
Mm.
how thin those walls are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are things that need to be dealt with on the front end as non-negotiables, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that things can be maximized for the betterment of everyone that's living there. Because what ends up happening is those people who might not be able to have the quality of sleep that they need end up spilling out into the streets and affecting people's lives, right? So it's the betterment of everyone to really think about these things. So I feel like there's expertise with Big
Yeah.
and come in on that, like, and help with those kinds of things. Yeah, but I'm sure there's a lot more. I feel like
No, that's so beautiful. And I mean, I think that's really the spirit of where we're all coming from as a network is like, yeah, we hold the bigger picture and we want to see policy change. And oftentimes, and this is really a lot of what, you know, we're exploring in like the small development incubator, right? It's those little changes that make, we
as
call them like the nodal interventions, right? It's like, yeah, we have a housing crisis, and like we have a design crisis in some ways, or a design opportunity. Let's not even use the word crisis,
right.
right? But that is really beautiful. So thank you so much, Deb. I put your email and Tony's email in the chat. People can reach out for now. And what we want to do is sort of build on the sort of what we've been doing and the where we're going by featuring sort of an opportunity for the bulk of our time together now to look at the creed that we previewed and held up and have since worked on at the gathering. And for that, I'm gonna hand it over to Devaney.
Thanks, Odin, and thanks, Deb. Um, I'm so excited to see everything that's going to be happening over there, especially because for those of you who know, I went to high school down the street. So it'll be fun to see how everything shapes up over there. Even seeing that building that y'all are in, I'm just like, that wasn't there before, and it's so beautiful. But okay, we are going to move into our next thing, which is talking about the creed. For those of you, well, they just made me big on this screen. For those of you who were at the gathering, you had an opportunity to look over the creed, to dissect it, to ruminate on it a little bit. And so we will have another opportunity to do that today. And I want to preface by saying that the idea is not to push anything onto anyone, a way of thinking, a way of being, but it's simply to provide an opportunity and an invitation to soak it in, see what resonates with you and what doesn't. I personally, when I read the creed, I get similar feels to how I do when I look at restorative justice or environmental justice principles, where I absorb it. I, identify what resonates with me and the work that I do, share it with other people, and, cross-reference my work with what's written there just to see sometimes, to help me get back on track to, the work that I want to be doing and in the way that I want to do it, which is with integrity, with people and environment at heart. So our word for today can be alignment. Um, and I think this is important because within our differences of who we are, what we do, and, where we come from, we want to really consider where do we find interconnectedness and opportunities to collaborate with one another. And I think that centering or even just considering this creed is a way to do that. So I asked Odin if you could put the creed in the chat. That takes you directly to our website where the creed is. We're going to put you in breakout rooms so you have an opportunity to read it as individuals, and then talk about it in breakout rooms. But before we do that, I just want to also say that our work as a network with Build It Green is to address systems level issues, and we need to be able to see the broader system in order to do that. So I want you to consider, how do you see or consider the broader system in the work that you do? One thing that we really love to live by at Build It Green is that we don't believe in problems. We believe in potential amidst the very real challenges that we face, and while also acknowledging, the trauma that communities have faced. How do we seek and commit to repair, restore, and regenerate? And with that, I ask you to consider within how you function and the work that you do you generally come from potential or problem solving in your efforts? So that could, relate to how you think about things in general, or, how you approach problems at work or anything like that. So seeing holes and realizing potential are both grounded in recognizing and honoring the essence of people, place, and nature. And so it's also important to consider, how would you describe the essence of the people and places where you work? So I'll just leave you with that, and give you some time, maybe a few minutes, to just think about, to read the creed, and as you're reading it, to think about, where do you see yourself and your work reflected in it? And possibly, where do you feel challenged by it? We'll put you into breakout rooms. We'll give you some time to actually read the creed and to think about those questions. And then we'll also have other questions for you to consider in your breakout rooms. And I will put those in the chat as well. So as you move into breakout rooms, once again, we're asking you to think about, as you go into breakout rooms, I want you to talk about with the person that you're paired with, where do you see the creed arising in your work and informing your work? And then we also have some guiding questions if you'd like to talk about that as well. I just said a lot. So read the creed, think about how it applies to you, how you might feel challenged by it, and then we'll put you in breakout rooms and you'll answer these questions that I just put in the prompt or in the chat. Cool. And you'll have around 15, possibly more minutes to do that.
Yeah. gonna start, yeah, I'm gonna start with 12 minutes for folks, and we'll extend that if needed. But take a few minutes to read the creed, and then take time as a group to chat around these questions that Devaney put in the chat.
So, are you bought in? Just kidding. Would love to have some reflections on people's thoughts or things that came up for you in your breakouts.
I could kick us off. So we were talking about how this creed needs to be connected to a theory of change, and how if you're operating within like an old paradigm, like the landlord tenant paradigm, where landlords are trying to extract profit from tenants in order to make their daily bread, that something like this creed really is like an element of a new paradigm that is operating within the context of an old paradigm, and it will constantly be facing kind of failure or an uphill struggle because it's not the right context. And that a creed like this really wants to have a theory of change. It grounds it within a supportive context of a paradigm that wants to support its change, because otherwise it's like kind of the wrong tool for the job from the perspective of the people who have the ability to implement it. And so I think I'd like to ask how this creed gets tethered to a theory of change for how it can get out there and make a difference in the world.
Thanks, Garland. Do we answer now, or do we just let people keep talking?
I think that's a very important and also very big comment to take on. So I think we can go there eventually, but you'll see, I'm just going to take notes of what people say in the chat, and then I think there'll be topics that we come back to. That's my recommendation, Devaney, as a fellow facilitator.
Got it. All right. Carlos.
Yeah, actually, Florentine and I spoke about how you would move that into action. And so we started to unpack how you honor the original life on the land, original peoples on the land, and how you would weave that into development projects, and including existing cultures that have recently been on the land or continue to be there now, and as well the workers, focusing on what's happening nationally to the workforce of development. And yeah, so we had a really good conversation about all of that and weaving it into being caring about how we build.
Something that we talked about, Majid and I, we talked about, community. How do we keep community centered in the whole process? We talked about how a lot of what happens is that community shares their perspective or their wants later in the process, which then puts pressure on the developer to rush it because they didn't account the time needed to have those conversations or their workshops, which then basically community voice gets ignored because of the cost associated with that time, rather than why don't we include the community in the beginning from the get-go, knowing that this is the new strategy or the new process that we're going to embark on, to be able to provide those comments and that's insight before we even get to the point where we need to make a decision now, and it just doesn't happen overnight in the community space. Another thing that we talked about is that a lot of the times the developments that do happen are dictated by those who provide the money. And what we need is for them just to give us the money and just sit, right? Like, let us make the decisions, let us handle it. All we need is the cash. And so that brought up another idea around, is like, how do we invest in our own communities? How can communities invest in themselves, but how can other communities invest in other communities? Rather than having a Bank of America give us $25 million, why don't we talk to 20 different communities that gives us 1 million, and then we fundraise that 5 million internally, the other rest internally, right? So it frees up the dependency to talk to these big conglomerate of funders, where we can actually find more community space, which we have now already, but we just don't have the money. But we just creating a different ecosystem that actually aligns with the creed, which gives us autonomy and to make those decisions while also amplifying and strengthening the very same communities that need that investment. Because once Bank of America decides to leave, they leave a gap that no one else can fill because it already became too expensive. And so that's a little bit of what we talked about. Majia, I'm not sure if I missed anything else.
You got it all in there. Thank you, Oscar.
Deb, do you want to go first or do I go first? All right. Uh, I'm like, whoa. So this is on another level compared to the conversation that Deb, Olivia, and I were having. But we actually read the creed out loud. And what came out for us is that it felt so different from the version that we had at the gathering, and this one felt much better to us. It felt, I guess, like those were the right words, and it felt more actionable, and also like, yeah, we can see the goal and we can see who's included, and we all felt included in the language, which wasn't necessarily the case with the language that was presented at the gathering. And very, very much motivational in a way, so that really felt good. And then where my mind went was this need to be translated in other languages. Like, it's really important that this doesn't stay just in English, but get translated into other languages so that other members of the communities which we want to serve can access it.
Well, I'll jump in because I feel like in this meeting, and I really appreciate this from Devaney and Odin and others of like, I just get to participate. I'm not, not in charge of I don't even know what the agenda was when I showed up. So this is fantastic. And I was in a conversation with Shawnee and Peter, and we, as I think the three of us are probably prone to do in lots of situations, just didn't necessarily follow the rules. So we used kind of the creed for kind of kind of a more expansive conversation around the role of different players in the system, and really kind of understanding the fact that we're all people. And so, there are financiers who are like, really committed to working toward like the spirit of the creed and people in local government, et cetera. And as I think a few of you have said here, we started off on an idea which I won't go into, but like of like, well, how do we actually start to like bring this to the ground and really test it around projects, and give like the property owners and developers and financiers and and architects and others the opportunity to really like play with bringing it to life, which I think helps get to gets to real action, and I think helps bring it further to life. So that was a lot of that was fun to have that conversation with those two people.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And I wanted to wrap us up with just going back to, the potential that we see in the network, going back to looking at, these kinds of opportunities on a regular basis, and providing resources and stories. And those stories and resources will be sourced from you in large part. I mean, we have a lot of, kind of touch points with folks who are in the network and want to figure out ways to weave that together. And a lot of the weaving, I mean, the beautiful thing about a network is we're all the weavers, if I may be so bold as to use that. expression. And so, let this be a continuation of the great work that we've done to date, and that, whenever the gatherings happen, when we get to come together in person, that there are other ways, these virtual network meetings that we'll be having, um, opportunities to participate in big programs, whether that's the Small Development Incubator, the Builder Developer Affinity Group, or the Regenerative Neighborhoods Initiative, and to be learning from those either as a direct participant or as a network member. And we'll be sharing thoughts and stories from those, but also want to hear, opportunities that you see and that you have in your communities and in your work to weave into those programs that we're offering. And I'm just wondering, kind of as any closing thoughts before we go, where you see the collective potential evolving now, given how you see the landscape in your place and in California. And any thoughts, you can share these in the chat. You can also just unmute and share them out loud again. But the sort of highest and best use of the network, and want to include that, knowing that at base, we're going to be inviting people together and sharing resources and figuring out ways to connect you all more informally and at your own pace. But are there other things that are coming up for folks that you would want to share, especially given this exploration of the creed? And I loved sort of, Jeremy, your ending of like how you looked at it as like, oh, this is like, how do we apply this to actual projects on the ground? So how do we apply that to our network and our work together moving forward? Florentine, please.
Thank you. So as I was listening to Deb talk, one of the things, I guess kind of an idea that arose was, I've participated in a lot of masterminds in the past where
Mm,
people bring together the project or the business that they're focused on and get together in small groups to talk about what they're doing, what their challenges are, and to learn from the expertise of the people there. And it sounds like informally that's already happening, but I just thought, wouldn't it be great if we had, as there are projects that are coming up in communities where people are seeking to follow the small developer creed, if there could be support, if it was, hey, this is the mastermind, we're working on the South Berkeley project, here's where we are at our next meeting, like these are the challenges that we are looking for, people to help us move past, and then people within the network could show up to
mm,
support what that next challenging thing is, because I think we have the experience and the connections within the whole innovators network to be able to help support some of the boots on the grounds projects, and especially maybe small developers or neighborhood groups or organizations that don't have maybe the experience yet in doing a project of this
mm,
level. Um,
mm-hmm,
but collectively we do. If there was a structure set up like a mastermind or something that was project based, with maybe advisor groups or a way for people to come into the fold to contribute, I think there could be real value there. It's just I maybe creating some simple structure
mm-hmm.
to facilitate, I think, what the desires already are within people in the network.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Florentine. And it's something, I like the way that you articulate it. And we've been doing, fall as program design session for 2026. And in all of our programs, we've talked about this mentoring element because the network is such an incredible resource. And so I think, whether it's a mastermind, or I know like the AIA does this program where they sort of like drop a bunch of folks into a community and they're skilled at working with community, and they have and we do stuff like that. I mean, that's such a beautiful, and again, dovetailing with what Jeremy and Shawnee and Peter were talking about, this dovetailing with the like real, like on the ground, like here's the project. How do we support this? Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you. Any other closing? We have about another minute or so, and then we'll do our traditional big and network off mute farewell. But any other final thoughts on like And we'll be asking you this moving forward, and we do invite people to be part of this network learning and advisory group. Anything else coming up for folks?
A minute, but I'll try. It's for, I guess what I'm thinking about is for developers that might be kind of thinking about this stuff, but not really knowing how to deal with it, right? The stuff laid out in Creed, and how some sort of a rough guide or like a curriculum around how to move through holistically might be helpful. I feel like big might be that's
Yeah.
big.
Well, so funny you should mention that, Deb, because we are designing our builder developer affinity group. And, not only are we weaving elements of that, what you said, into the small development incubator, but Jeremy and Sam and others have really been articulating how we do that with developers and share this up front so that we can kind of transform the industry. Yeah, as Jeremy, I'm now just seeing you wrote that in the chat. All right, we are at time. Want to honor everyone's time. Thank you so much for being here, Amelie. I love the reflection that this sort of made your day much better. I hope others had similar feels, just seeing familiar and not familiar faces. Like, well, there's new people who are here, so welcome, and we will be following up with you all. And just wish you a wonderful rest of the week. And thank you for being here and being part of the network. So you can unmute if you like, and we all get to wave and say goodbye. Great to see you, or whatever you'd like to share.
Thanks,
So,
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate
bye,
everyone.
y'all.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank
See
you.
you all.